So you like reading. You want to read more. Perhaps you've seen these videos of these people on the internet that read heaps of books, and you've thought, these people, they read so many books. I want to read all the books as well. So many. I want to be just like this guy. You read book. Well, fear not, gentle listener, for I am here to help you with that. A quick disclaimer before we get started. I'm not a writer or I didn't go to uni for any of this. I just like books and I've read Dune. So this is it. This is my only qualification. I didn't even read the appendix because it's like 50 pages long. The first tip I have, if you want to read more books, you're currently watching a YouTube video about reading and not reading. It's not a great start, but we can work with it. Gathering inspiration is good and valid and fantastic, but honestly, probably the best piece of information I can give you right now is stop watching the video and go read a book. That's kind of the best way to read more, is to read. Alright, so regardless of whether you are starting to read again for the first time, or you've not finished a book before, or maybe you have and you read lots but you want to increase the volume of your reading, regardless of where you're at in that journey, you're gonna need to pick a book. Personally, I think you should pick a book that you're really excited about reading, that you know you will enjoy, and that's fairly short and fairly easy to read. So the book that got me back into reading was this book, which is Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. It's a Star Wars book. I discovered that this book existed when I was like 16 or 17, and I immediately wanted to read it because Ahsoka is one of my favorite Star Wars characters, and it filled in a gap in the Star Wars story that is not covered by any movies or TV shows. So I knew I wanted to read it. I knew I was excited to read it. It's also fairly short, fairly easy to read. There's not that many words on each page. So I was really motivated and excited to read this book, and I finished it quite quickly. And once I'd done that first step, I was much more motivated to start the next one because I'd completed a project. I'd started at the beginning, I'd read through, but how do we finish that first book, and how do we do that in a timely manner? Something that I found really helped me was a specific reading goal. So let me tell you a story. November of 2018, I was waiting in a airport bookstore with Chester, and I found this book, which is another Star Wars book. I know, calm down, I like Star Wars. It looked really good, and so I decided to buy it with the intention of reading it, obviously. And I did read it, and I finished it, but it took me a whole year to read this one book, which is still an achievement, and I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a year to read a book if that's the pace that you're reading at. But the reality was I could have easily finished this book much quicker. I just didn't. So there are two things that I've found that can help with that. The first is to give yourself a bit of a goal of how long it's going to take you to finish the book. So the next year, I decided that I wanted to read more, which I'm assuming you've already done if you're watching this video. And so I gave myself the goal of reading one book every month. So by the end of the year, I'd read 12 books. And having that goal and that time frame really helped me remember to actually go and read. And the other thing I did is I actually made a video about it and posted it. I didn't just make this arbitrary goal up in my mind. I also told people about it publicly on the internet. And you obviously don't have to do that. You can just tell a friend or a family member and they can check in with you. But I think that helped to keep me accountable because I really wanted to make a video at the end of the year talking about all the books I'd read. And so that was kind of my overall goal. And that's what I kept coming back to when I was reading a book. Every month I would try and finish the book so I could start the next one so that by the end of the year, I would have a long list of books to talk about. If you want to see my 2020 reading book list, there'll be a link to it somewhere, I'd imagine. The second thing that helped me and that I would recommend you do if you want to read more books is rather than picking one book and saying, I'm going to read this book, pick a few books or have a few books in mind that you want to read so that your motivation to finish the first book comes from your excitement to start the second book. So after I finished this one, I discovered that there were 2 more books in the series. So simply by deciding I would read more books, making a goal and telling people about that goal, and by discovering that there were more books in the series to read, I went from reading a book in an entire year to reading the second one in a month and the third one in 2 months, which is still not very impressive, but it's a massive improvement. So for 2021, I'm currently reading my 9th book of the year, but I have about probably 10 or 12 books sitting on my shelf that I'm excited to read. I'm equally excited to read all of them. And so I know as soon as I finish this one, I can choose another one and start the next one. And that's motivating me to get through this book so I can start the next one. That's fine, but how do we manage our time in order to read? You might be thinking to yourself, but I don't have time in my day to get through enough reading to read a book in a month. Let me tell you, yes you do. You go outside for a walk in the nature, you read book. Get up in morning, book. You're cleaning teeth, book. Scroll on Instagram for hours every day, book. You're driving somewhere in your car, book. Oh, you think you're going to go to sleep? No, you read book. Besides, right now you're probably locked down in big boy pandemic, so you can't go anywhere anyway. What you going to do? Book. Right. So, speaking from personal experience, the problem I have is not finding time in my day to read, because there's plenty of free time in my day that I could be reading. The problem is substituting my reading time for other, more instantly gratifying things. And I think this is the hardest thing to deal with. And honestly, I have just found it comes with practice and with constantly reminding yourself that you do like reading and that you will enjoy it if you actually sit down and do it. And that's something I forget. And that's something I forget constantly as well. And this can be really tough. And I think, yeah, it's the hardest part about reading. Probably the biggest thing anyway that stops me from reading more books. Honestly, my advice would just be, if you have a point in your day where you have half an hour free, maybe it's simply you're about to go to sleep and you've got, half an hour before you want to go to sleep. First of all, recognize that you don't really have a desire to read. Recognize that what you want to do is scroll on your phone. And if you can observe that, why are you focusing on that? No, focus on my face. Oh, I forgot to turn my light on. I always do this. There's always some part of my setup that I forget. If you can recognize that and observe it, you can choose otherwise. So, for example, you have half an hour free. Immediately, my mind anyway goes to, I could watch YouTube, I could play a game. Content, entertainment. That's just how our brains work. If you can recognize that and consciously choose, I'm going to read 2 pages of my book. And that's all you tell yourself you're going to do. Just 2 pages. You can read 2 pages. If after 2 pages you're not having it, then you can always go and scroll or watch that video. However, often what I find happens is I read 2 pages, and then if I'm reading a book that I really like, and that goes back to what I was talking about before with choosing books that you know you'll enjoy, usually after 2 pages, I'm invested in the story, I remember the thing that happened in the last chapter, and I want to read more, and I end up reading the whole chapter anyway, despite the fact that I didn't want to in the first place. As with anything like reading a book or working on a project or something, the hardest part about it is everything that leads up to reading the first page, because all of that stuff in your mind, that mind game, is what's hard about doing that. As soon as you get past that and you just open the book and start reading, you have a great time and you remember that you enjoy it, read a whole chapter, and then, you're late for whatever the thing you were supposed to do because you've been reading for an hour and not half an hour. Camera went flat. I don't remember what I was saying. Knowledge! Wish I had some. So when should you read? Whenever you like, to be honest. There's plenty of videos on the internet of creative ideas of when you can read your book. I usually read mine at night, but I do work in the evenings a lot. So sometimes I'll read in the morning, like I'll get up, have breakfast, read a chapter on my book, and then start my day if I have time to do that. The other thing I do is I just bring my book with me when I'm going places. And so if I'm waiting for someone at a cafe, book. If I'm at a rehearsal, I've done that a lot. I've been at rehearsals where you're not needed, and so you're just sitting on the side. Instead of picking up my phone, pick up my book. And there's something so satisfying about sitting in a group of people who are all scrolling on your phone, and you're there with your book. I love that. You read book, It's good. It's good. It's good. Reading doesn't always mean self-help books. Where's my example? Something I've noticed watching videos on the internet about books is a lot of people recommending and reading non-fiction self-help books or informative books. I've got nothing against that. I think that is fantastic and there's wonderful opportunities from learning. That's totally fine. However, what I would say, stop focusing on that. Focus on me. Thank you. It's okay to read books purely for entertainment. If you're sitting down to watch a movie on your own or with friends or whatever, you don't think about the choice in movies based on how much am I going to learn from this movie? I cannot watch 2007 action TV show Burnout because I not learn anything. I watch the news and the David Attenboroughs because they make me smart. This is a book called The Art of the Cut. It's a non-fiction, informative book all about video editing. It's fantastic, and there is a very large amount of learning in here. I've owned this book for like 4 years. I've read 2 chapters. It's fantastic. Kind of boring though. And on the contrary, I have read 6 Star Wars novels because I found them entertaining and interesting, and I was motivated to read them. Except Life Debt. Didn't finish that. It was a bit... And so in my opinion, reading for entertainment is entirely as valid as reading for improving your life or learning something. That's not to say that you can't learn anything from fiction. I think you totally can. Star Wars maybe is pushing it, but there are plenty of fiction books that I've read that have made me think and that I've learned something, or I've come away with a different perspective on life or broadened my horizons by reading fiction. Make me smart! Basically what I'm saying is read what interests you and what you enjoy. And don't let other people's opinions on what you should read dictate what you should read. Having said that though, I do think it's very valuable to, once you've read a few books and you have some momentum up and you've got a few that you've completed, I do think expanding your horizons and stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit can be very good for you. For example, after I'd read a bunch of Star Wars books, instead of just picking all Star Wars books, I read Dune, and I read the C.S. Lewis sci-fi trilogy, and I read young adult sci-fi. So I do think there is a lot of value in stepping out of your comfort zone a bit, but don't do that until you've got some momentum reading stuff that you know you'll love. Best case scenario, you discover another book that you really, really enjoyed. Worst case scenario, it's much easier to recognize something you do really like after you've read something that you didn't like as much. It's all valuable, my friends. Couple of quick things I see a lot in these kind of videos. A lot of people say you should be reading multiple books at a time. Personally, I don't really do that. I much prefer starting one book, reading it, finishing it, and then moving on to the next one. But I would say do whatever works for you. Same with, do you need to finish every book you start? I try to. Again, a lot of people that I've seen on the YouTube say that you don't need to, or that you shouldn't try and finish every book that you read. I just enjoy the satisfaction of starting a book and finishing it. I don't recommend you try and finish a book like this that you're really not enjoying. I did, because by the time I got halfway through, it became like a challenge within myself. I was like, I am going to finish this book if it's the last thing I do. Having said that, I didn't finish this one, and I'm really struggling to finish this one. It's August now. I've been reading this since May. I started this one. I've read 2 other books in between, and I'm partway through this one because it's not really holding my attention. So I'm just taking it in little bites. And again, I think that's totally fine. I just like trying to finish everything I start, but you don't have to. So obviously this is not the most super serious how to read more books video on the internet, and I'm not trying to make it that. The main thing I'd love to leave you with is, firstly, reading should be fun and entertaining. And if you're finding it's not fun, maybe you should reassess what you're reading. Or if you are reading something because you have to, like you have to study and you're reading a textbook or something, then I would suggest having something like this on the side that you can come back to. And even if you're just reading 3 pages a day after you finish your study, it will help to remind you that reading is fun and that you can choose your own destiny when it comes to reading. And secondly, please don't be discouraged by seeing the progress of other people on the internet or in real life. My reading speed is like 1 book a month on a good month, but that's me. And so if your goal is just to finish 1 book, like if you've never finished a book and you just want to finish 1 book and it takes you a whole year to do it, that's a huge achievement and a huge step in the right direction. And that is an achievement for you. There are people that I have seen on the internet that read like 2 books a week, which is insane. And I don't think I could ever do that. And I find that very inspiring, but it's important not to get discouraged. I don't read an insane amount of books. I'm not an expert. I just like reading. And I'm hoping I can encourage you to give it a try as well. If it takes you 2 years to finish a book, that's fine. You still finished a book. Now finally, and most importantly, let me just remind you, if you're still here, you're still watching a YouTube video and not reading a book. Why are you still here? Turn your device off, turn it off, pick up that book that I know you have and start reading it. You've come here for inspiration. Great. You probably didn't get it from me. Fantastic. You need to pick up the book and read it. This video is over. There's nothing more for you here. This is it. This is the end. Don't even think about clicking on another video in the recommended tab, because that's going to be another 10 minutes of your life that you're not reading a book. Pick it up, open it up, read the words. This video is over. Just go. I'm going to go back to reading now, and so are you. Good. Get out of here. All right, so you stuck around to the end to see if there are any super secret tips at the end of the video. Fine, I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to give you my final super secret tip, but you know what? If you're still here and none of my other tips have helped you, I'll show you. I'll show you the secret. I want you to get on your computer and download a video game called The Longing. It's a game where you play as a little shadow monster and you walk around hallways and you have to wait for 400 days for your king to wake up. Yes, 400 actual real-life days. In this game, you can collect books and you can read the books in the game. There you go. See? Trick your brain. And if that doesn't work, then give up on books and listen to our podcast. Link in the description.